Hello everyone, welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. This is a video for a Tribal Wizards Commander deck that I've been working on. So it's an Is It deck, so blue and red. We're using Nin the Pain Artist as our commander. So 1 blue, 1 red for a 1/1. X blue and red, tap. Nin the Pain Artist deals X damage to target creature. That creature's controller draws X cards. So if your opponent doesn't have anything that makes it so they can skip their discard phase. They have like a Reliquary Tower or something like that. If they don't have any card like that, we can do a bunch of damage to one of their creatures, potentially on their turn. They're going to draw a bunch of cards, and then they'll be forced to discard quite a few of those cards as well if they already have their hand pretty full. So she's cheap, so 1 and a blue, or blue and a red, I mean, for a 1/1. Comes back, costs only 4 to play her the second time, 6 the third time, 8, so on. So, pretty cheap commander, so just 1 of each mana. We're going to move into our lands. So, starting off, we have 17 islands. We have 8 mountains. We have an Academy Ruins, legendary land. Tap for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 1 in a blue, tap it to put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. So once we get to the artifacts, we're running quite a few mana rocks as well. So if those mana rocks get destroyed, Academy Ruins can help bring them back. We're running Cavern of Souls, so it's a tribal deck. So we're just as Cavern of Souls enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. We're going to choose Wizards. It taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. So we'll call Wizards, and then we can get our important Wizards into play without fear of them getting countered. We have Is It Boilerworks, enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and then it taps for both blue and red. We have Reliquary Tower. You have no maximum hand size, and it taps for 1 colorless mana. We have Riptide Laboratory. Taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 1 in a blue. Tap it to return target wizard you control to its owner's hand. So this is really good for wizards that have an enter the battlefield effect, or if one of your wizards is getting targeted with a spell, you can pay 1 in a blue and return it to your hand to potentially to stop a wizard from getting killed, or again with wizards that have effects when they enter the battlefield. We have Spire Bluff Canal. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands, and it taps for either blue or red. We have Steam Vents. Taps for either blue or red. As it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. We have Sulphur Falls. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a mountain, and it taps for either blue or red. We have Swiftwater Cliffs. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and then taps for either blue or red. And finally, we have 1 Vesuva. You may have Vesuva enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land on the battlefield. So I can use it to copy Cavern of Souls, for example, or any of my other lands or any of my opponent's lands. And if I do it with Cavern of Souls, I'll then be able to potentially throw out 2 wizards, and neither one of them will be able to be countered if I use the ability on Cavern of Soul to add 1 mana to my mana pool to cast a creature of the chosen type. So again, that is Vesuva. We're going to go into our artifacts. We're running 1 Chromatic Lantern, 3 mana. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and then your lands basically tap for whatever I want, and then tap to add 1 mana of any color. So lands tap for whatever I want, and the lantern taps for 1 color as well. We have a Fire Diamond, 2 mana, enters the battlefield tapped and taps for red. We have 1 Isochron Scepter, 2 mana, an artifact with imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand. 2 mana, tap it, you may copy the exiled card. If you do, you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. This is one of the key cards in the deck, and when I get into our instance, I can show you what I'm using, because there's a few combos I have built into it that, with Isochron Scepter and some of these mana rocks, will allow me to do things multiple times and potentially win the game with it. So, next up, we have Mind's Eye, 5 mana. When an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. We have the Sky Diamond, 2 mana. enters the battlefield tapped and taps for blue. We have Soul Ring, 1 mana, taps for 2 colorless mana. We have Thran Dynamo, 4 mana, taps for and then taps for 3 colorless mana, and 1 Vanquisher's Banner. So 5 mana. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. And whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. So every creature in this deck is a wizard. So whenever I play a wizard, I'll be able to draw a card, and then all my wizards will get +1/+1. We're going to go into our creatures. We have 1 Adeliz, the Cinder Wind, 1 blue and red for a 2/2 with flying and haste. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, wizards you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn. So if I play multiple spells, I'll be able to basically pump those wizards quite a bit. We have Arcane Artisan, 2 and a blue for a 0/3. 2 and a blue, tap it. Target player draws a card, then exiles a card from their hand. If a creature card is exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of the card. When Arcane Artisan leaves the battlefield, exile all tokens created with it at the beginning of the next end step. So I could use this, pay 2 and a blue, tap it, have opponents exile cards, they get token creatures, and then I can use my Riptide Laboratory to bounce the Arcane Artisan into my hand, and then all those tokens then will get exiled. We have Azami, Lady of Scrolls, 2 and 3 blue for a 0/2. Tap an untapped wizard you control to draw a card. We have Baral, Chief of Compliance, 1 and a blue for a 1/3. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So, as you can imagine, it's a blue deck. We're running quite a few counterspells, so we'll be able to draw cards with that ability, and then if we do that, we have to discard a card. We have Goblin Electromancer, blue and red for a 2/2. Instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less, so both Baral and Goblin Electromancer will drop those down by 2 if they're both in play. We have Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, 1 and a blue for a 0/2. Tap, draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, exile Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control, and he transforms into Jace, Telepath Unbound, Planeswalker, comes in with 5 loyalty, +1, up to 1 target creature gets plus or -2/-0 until the end of turn, until your next turn. -3, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. And -9, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, target opponent puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So pretty decent Planeswalker there. So that was for, again, for Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, which then transforms into Jace, Telepath Unbound. We have Jori and Ruin Diver, 1 blue and red for a 2/3. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card. We have Laboratory Maniac, 2 and a blue for a 2/2. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. I can potentially Ice Constructor and potentially just draw a bunch of cards, and if Laboratory Maniac is in play, I would win the game. We have League Guildmage, blue and red for a 2/2. 3 and a blue, you can tap it to draw a card. Or X and red, tap it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with converted mana cost X. You may choose new targets for the copy. We have Mizzium Meddler, 2 and a blue for a 1/4 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may change a target spell or ability to Mizzium Meddler. So let's say somebody's going to destroy one of my other creatures, and I don't want that creature to die. I could potentially flash in Mizzium Meddler and have that spell get redirected to the Meddler. Let's say we're lightning bolting something, and lightning bolt does 3 damage. I can flash in Meddler, have lightning bolt hit him, and then he won't die as well because he would still have 1 health left. We have Naru Miha, Master Wizard, 2 and 2 blue for a 3/3 with flash. When she enters the battlefield, to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, you may choose new targets for the copy, and other wizards you control get +1/+1. We have Niv Mizzet, Draco Genius, 2 blue, 2 red for a 5/5 with flying. When it deals damage to a player, you may draw a card. And then for blue and a red, Niv Mizzet deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And then you get to draw a card as well. We have Niv Mizzet Paran, 3 blue, 3 red for a 5/5. The spell can't be countered. Has flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet Param deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So I have all 3 versions of Niv Mizzet. So next one is Niv Mizzet the Firemind. 2 blue, 2 red for a 4/4 with flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet the Firemind deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Tap to draw a card. So again, with Ice Crown Scepter and the spell I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, I can potentially just keep tapping him to keep drawing cards to keep pinging damage. We have Omnispell Adept, 4 and a blue for a 3/4. For 2 and a blue, you can tap it. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. We have Patron Wizard, 3 blue for a 2/2. Tap an untapped wizard you control, counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. So basically, all these creatures are wizards, so anything I can basically just have counterspell whenever I want. I just had to tap one of my wizards to counter the spell. Next up, we have Prodigal Sorcerer, 2 and a blue for a 1/1. Tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Again, with the Ice Crown Scepter, I can potentially just do this infinitely. We have Raven Guild Master, 1 and 2 blue for a 1/1. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player removes the top 10 cards of their library from the game. Can morph, so you pay 3, it comes in as a 2/2 face down, and I can flip it over for 2 and 2 blue. We have 1 Sage of Epicure, 1 blue for a 1/1. When it comes into play, look at the top 4 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. We have Snapcaster Mage, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to the spell's converted mana cost. Basically, then cast it and then exile it. So I can get with Riptide Laboratory, I can play Snapcaster, give something flashback, use the Laboratory to bounce Snapcaster and play him again later. We have Spellseeker. So 2 and a blue for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less, reveal it, then put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So this will allow me to get to some of my combo pieces for some of my infinite combos. We have Stormchaser Mage, blue and red for a 1/3 with flying haste and prowess. We have Talrand, Sky Summoner, 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. We have Teferi, Mage of Zalafir, 2 and 3 blue for a 3/4 with flash. Creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield have flash, and each opponent can cast spells only anytime he or she casts a sorcery. Basically means nothing can be played on my turn from my opponents, so they can't counter anything and things like that. I have Vendilion Click, 1 and 2 blue for a 3/1 with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player reveals the chosen card, puts it on the bottom of their library, then draws a card. We have Venture, Shaper Savant, 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. And final creature we have is Willbender, 1 and a blue for a 1/2. It has Morph as well, so you can pay 3 to play it face down as a 2/2 creature, and then you pay 1 and a blue to flip it face up. When it is turned face up, change target of target spell or ability with a single target. So if my opponent's going to destroy one of my creatures, I can flip over Willbender and redirect that spell somewhere else. We're going to go into our enchantments. We have As Foretold, 2 and a blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold. On each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is a number of time counters on As Foretold. We have Jace's Sanctum, 3 and a blue. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, scry 1. We have Precognition Field, 3 and a blue. You may look at the top card of your library. You may do this at any time. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, and you can pay 3 to exile the top card of your library. We have Psychic Corrosion, 2 and a blue. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. We have Rhystic Study, 2 and a blue. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1 mana. We have Sphinx's Tutelage, 2 and a blue. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If they're both non-land cards, that share a color repeat the process, and then you can pay 5 and a blue to draw a card, then discard a card. And final enchantment, we have Thousand Year Storm, 4 blue and red. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant and sorcery spell you've cast before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. We go into our instance. We have Boomerang, 2 blue, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Really good card because you can basically bounce a Planeswalker with it. You can bounce anything with it for just 2. We have Brainstorm, 1 blue, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. We have Cancel, 1 and 2 blue, counter target spell. We have Counterspell, 2 mana, counter target spell. Dramatic Reversal, 1 and a blue, untap all non-land permanents you control. This is the card that'll allow me to do some things infinitely if I imprint this onto Icecrown Scepter. Basically, I play this onto Icecrown Scepter, and then for 2 mana, I can basically just cast this, tap the Scepter, cast this, untap all my non-land permanents, all my mana rocks will untap, and then I can just basically constantly tap like Prodigal Sorcerer to deal 1 damage. I can constantly tap untapped wizards to draw cards, especially if I have Laboratory Maniac in play, and so on. We'll go back to that card in a second. I'll show you all the different combos that work with it. We have Essence Scatter, so 1 in a blue, counter target creature spell. We have a Hydroblast, 1 blue, choose 1 counter target spell if it's red, or destroy target permanent if it's red. We have a Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature or player. We have a Psychic Rebuttal. Counter target instant or sorcery spell that targets you. And Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instants and or sorceries in your graveyard, you may copy the spell countered this way. You may choose new targets for the copy. We have Psychic Spiral, 4 in a blue. Shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library. Target player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If I shuffle a bunch of cards in, I can potentially mill a bunch of cards of this. We have Red Elemental Blast, 1 red. Choose 1. Counter target blue spell or destroy target blue permanent. We have Rethink, 2 in a blue. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X, where X is the spell's mana cost, or converted mana cost. We have Reverberate, 2 red. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. We have Revolutionary Rebuff, 1 in a blue. Counter target non-artifact spell unless its controller pays 2. We have Syncopate, X in blue. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. We have Turn Aside, 1 blue. Counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. We have Wizard's Lightning, 2 in a red. This spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a wizard. Wizard's Lightning deals 3 damage to any target. So basically this just becomes Lightning Bolt because all my creatures are wizards. And then we have Wizard's Retort, 1 and 2 blue. Spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. Counter target spell. So that just becomes Counterspell. We're going to go into our sorceries. We have Beacon Bolt, 1 blue and red. Beacon Bolt deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant and or sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard, and it also has Jumpstart. So you can cast a card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying the mana cost, then exile the card. We have 1 Denying Wind, 7 and 2 blue, so 9 mana. Search target player's library for up to 7 cards and remove them from the game. Then that player shuffles his or her library. So if you know what decks you're playing against, you know there's like certain combo pieces. If you have enough mana, or you somehow maybe use Omnispell Add-Out to play it for just 2 and a blue, you search your opponent's library and exile up to 7 cards, and then they shuffle their library. We have Enter the Infinite, 8 and 4 blue, sorcery. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your library, then put a card from your hand on top of your library. You have no maximum hand size until your next turn. So if I have Laboratory Maniac out with this, I basically just draw my cards, and then if I have a zombie, Lady of Scrolls out, I can just basically tap and untap Wizard to draw the card I put back with Enter the Infinite and potentially win the game. And finally we have Mizzium Mortars, 1 in a blue, or what? Not blue. 1 in a red. Mizzium Mortars deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control, and it has an overload cost of 3 and 3 red. You may cast a spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So if you pay overload, it deals 4 damage to each creature you don't control. We're going to go back here to Dramatic Reversal. So 1 in the blue, untap all non-land permanents you control. So that basically untaps all my creatures, all my artifacts, and so on. So it'll untap my Chromatic Lantern, my Fire Diamond, my Icecrown Scepter, the Mind's Eye, that actually doesn't tap, but Sky Diamond, Soul Ring, Thran Diamond, and Thran Dynamo. Um, we could use it potentially with a zombie, Lady of Scrolls, and Laboratory Maniac if I have him out. So a zombie, I can basically just tap a bunch of untapped wizards, draw that many cards, pay 2 mana, use Dramatic Reversal to reset everything, and then just keep tapping untapped wizards until I draw my last card, and then tap one more untapped wizard to draw a card with an empty library, and you would win off of Laboratory Maniac. We could do it, do it infinitely with Prodigal Sorcerer. So Prodigal Sorcerer says tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. You basically tap him, do a damage, pay 2, use the Icecrown Scepter to play Dramatic Reversal again, untap everything, including the Sorcerer, tap the Sorcerer, deal 1 damage. We could use it with Niv Mizzet. So tap to draw a card, and when you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So basically just tap, draw a card, Dramatic Reversal, reset everything, tap him again, draw a card, ping a damage. What other creatures do we have that work that would go infinitely with that? Spellseeker, let me see what else we had here. The Prodigal Sorcerer was one. Omnispell Adept we could basically use again if we wanted to. Yeah, so as long as we have our mana rocks untapped and we have a massive amount of mana, we can also use it with our commander, with Nin the Paint Artist. So we basically pay X, we pay blue, sorry, X, pay blue, play red, tap X lands, and then Nin the Paint Artist will deal that much damage to a creature. Their controller draws X cards. I can potentially make them basically just draw out their entire deck and have them, and then do it again. They have an empty library. They would go to draw a card and be unable to draw a card, and then I would win off of that. So basically, I'm using Icecrown Scepter and Dramatic Reversal to potentially either win by having Laboratory Maniac in play and having it drawing off an empty library, pinging infinite damage with any of my creatures that tap that do damage, and so on. So I think it's a pretty fun deck. Only card I don't have in this deck and I don't currently own right now is Cyclonic Rift. Once I get one of those, that will go in. I don't know what I would cut to make room for it, but a Cyclonic Rift would also really be really good for this deck as well, to basically just overload it and bounce all of my opponent's creatures. So that's going to do it for this video. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks again for watching.